Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any good one?
I don't know. I haven't turned him yet. Hey guys, this is Gene Jensen with BassResource.com. When the fishing gets tough, one of the best finesse techniques that there is a shaky head. Now, there's been a lot of questions about it on the website lately, and so I'm gonna attempt to do a video on a shaky head as soon as I get this fish in. Little finesse rod, little ball-headed jig with a worm. Catch a good 5-pound bass like that. Not bad. What I'm using here is I've actually got a Picasso shaky head. There's some in they come all different shapes and sizes and everything else. One thing to the equipment that you would use with a shaky head is what I've got here is I've got a medium extra fast rod, a medium rod, medium moderate, medium extra fast. Either one of them will work. I like something with a little bit more backbone, so I go with a medium extra fast or a medium fast action. Straight tail worm, almost always a straight tail worm. And one of the things people always say is you want to make sure you have a floating worm with a shaky head, and which that's true. Well, let me show you the trick that I do to figure out whether a worm floats or not. Watch. That's how I find out. Let me tell you why. If a worm has salt in it, it's going to sink. If it does not have salt in it, it's going to float. Zoom makes their trick worms both in super salty and plain, which have no salt in them. The plain ones will float. They'll float enough to be able to fish them on a jig head. So if you're ever wondering whether a worm is good for a shaky head or not, stick it in your mouth and see if you taste salt. That's it. Just that easy. I'm telling you, the types of shaky heads are endless. I have a few that I prefer that I've been fishing for a while. The spot remover, which is actually a stand-up head. I wouldn't even call it a shaky head. You start shaking it, it falls over. But a lot of people use that as a shaky head. I use a Picasso shakedown. I forget to take the knot out of it. The Strike King shaky head, I can't remember what they call it, a pro shake or something like that. One that I've been fishing for a while that works really good in the grass is the Spot Stalker. Spot Stalker kind of looks like this. It's a little grass. It does fairly well in the grass. The Shaky 2 from Mega Strike. This son of a gun is awesome. It does not fall over. It stays standing the whole time. And what's nice about a stand-up jig is you can fish a worm that does not float, like a trick worm, a salted trick worm, or something like that. What is the name of this jig? I cannot remember, but Seabird Outdoors. I'll put the URL up on here. Seabird Outdoors sells this. It's a little football stand-up jig. It's got a little bit heavier hook, so I use a 15-pound, 17-pound line with it, and a medium heavy rod instead of a spinning rod, a medium extra fast spinning rod. But those are the ones I use. Everybody makes them, but let me focus on two types. Actually, just one type is the ball head. Okay, when you're looking at a ball head jig or a shaky head, you have two choices a lot of times. You have a 60-degree bend. You see how the eye comes out of the head at a 60-degree, and you have a 90-degree bend where it comes straight up. And now there's advantages and disadvantages to both. The 90-degree shakes better. So when you're shaking your worm, it has a better shake to it, but it gets hung up a lot worse. The 60-degree doesn't shake as much, but you still get a little shake out of it, and it comes out of snags and out of stumps and brush piles a lot easier. So that's the difference between the two. The things to consider when you're setting up your rod and reels for a shaky head is the light wire hooks. When I first started fishing shaky heads, I was fishing these little spot stalkers, and the guy that basically designed them gave them to me, and I took them out and I fished with them, and I was bending hooks out, and I couldn't understand why I was bending hooks out. And he looked at me and said, "You dummy," he said, "You're fishing it on a medium heavy rod with braided line. So every time you set a hook on a fish, it's going to bend the hook out. So you got to take that into consideration. So when I'm fishing a light wire shaky head, I'm fishing it on a medium fast action or medium extra fast action spinning rod, 10 to 12 pound test line, 6, 8, 10 pound test line, sometimes 12. And I'm taking it easy on the hook sets because I use braided line. There's no stretch, so I'm not going to set it as hard, even if I was using monofilament or fluorocarbon on the spinning rod. Well, let's get up here and I'm going to show you how to fish it, how to basically shake your worm, and we'll see if we catch a couple of fish and end this video out. All right, the times of the year the times that I would use a shaky head is when the fishing gets tough. I mean, we all hear the tournament anglers talk about when you have a post front conditions, cold water, post spawn, anytime the fish are in a funk, and I'm having a hard time catching a limit or hard time catching fish, I'm going to downsize. I'm going to go to a shaky head, and I'm going to work it really slow. It is not a search bait. You don't want to go looking for fish with a shaky head because you work it so slow. I mean, a cast is 3, 4, 5 minutes long. I'm going to fish it in an area where I know there's fish, but they're just not in the mood to bite. So other times I'll fish it, well, in post spawn is when they're, that couple of week period where they're just resting and they're getting over the spawn and the stresses of the spawn. And, I'll work that around brush piles, in tight to cover, things like that. What other times? Dead of the winter. I love to fish a shaky head in the dead of the winter. A little bit harder to detect a bite, and that's when this braid really comes in handy because you can feel just about everything. You can feel when that fish sucks in the bait. Any other time, well, just when the bite's tough, and that's when I'll pull it out and start shaking it around. But basically what you do is you cast it out, you let it sink to the bottom and sit there for a minute. Now you got a worm that floats up. Okay, so you get your ball head sitting on the bottom and the worm's up here just doing this number. Now you don't shake it on a tight line. Shake it on a tight line, all you're doing is you're dragging the weight on the bottom. You get it to that slack line where you have about 6, 8, 10 feet of line laying on the water, and you shake your rod just like this, and that gives that enough vibration to get that thing shaking. You shake it a little bit and then you'll move it just a hair. What I like to do when I'm fishing like a flat or something like that is I'll drag it real slow on the bottom until I feel a rock or a stump or a log or something until it stops on something. And then I'll sit there and I'll drop my line to slack and I'll start shaking. And I'll stop and I'll shake it a little bit more and I'll stop. And my boat's swinging around, so I'm losing my sound. Okay. Bring it over top of a stump and then just shake it. Some of the shaky heads will have this little spring on it, a big spring or a little spring. Let me get a little closer. I know this GoPro requires this. All right. Got that little spring on it. Okay, the way I rig a spot remover or a jig head or anything else, I bite the first little bit off to give myself a little flat section on the worm. I screw it onto the worm, or screw it onto the jig head. Okay. Now, a lot of you guys that fish these Texas rigs will try to slide that hook all the way through that worm. That's not what you want to do. Okay. Lay your hook alongside your worm like this. See where it's going to go in at so you can keep that worm straight. Then go to that spot and just tug on your worm. You just pull on your worm. Look at that. What happens when that fish bites is it does what it's supposed to, and that hook point comes out of the worm. But you've got a perfectly weedless worm. Okay. The other thing I do 99% of the time when a shaky head, the bite is really, really hard, I'm going to break out the JJ's Magic. I'm either going to dip the tail chartreuse, or I'm going to dip the whole worm clear, or I'm going to dip the whole worm clear and then go to chartreuse. Bite's pretty good today. I don't see any reason to add clear to it. That's it. Good old JJ's. Telling you, when the bite gets tough, that's what you go to if you want to have a better chance at catching fish. It's what I've got the most confidence in when it comes to a fish attracting, you know, a scent. And that chartreuse tail sure makes a difference too. That's one of those things you just kind of throw it into a crack. You just know there's a fish there. Now I want you to notice what I did with the hook set. It was an over the head hook set. I want to try to get that fish hooked in the roof of the mouth. And with shaky heads, that's what you do with any kind of jig head. I like to set over top of the head. That way I get a good positive hook set. This is a typical kingfisher bass. Bring him on in. There you go. It's about the average size fish on this lake, so it's nothing real big. But that's a shaky head in a nutshell. Like I always say, visit bassresource.com for the answer to all your questions about bass fishing. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit that little like button down at the bottom if you like this video. And have a great day.